The night had that soft stillness only autumn could bring. The wind outside brushed against the windows, carrying the faint sound of leaves tumbling along the street. Inside the living room, the air felt calm, warm, and a little too quiet. Clara sat on the couch, holding a mug of hot cocoa between her hands. The glow from the television flickered across her face as she watched her son, Ethan, scroll through Netflix with his usual concentration. Romantic movies again? She teased, raising an eyebrow. Ethan looked up with a grin. You're the one who cries every time someone gets a happy ending, Mom. She laughed softly. Maybe I just like seeing people end up where they belong. Moments like this had become special to Clara. After her divorce 2 years ago, her life had slowed down in unexpected ways. The house was quieter now. The kind of quiet that sometimes felt peaceful and sometimes too heavy. Ethan had stayed with her while finishing college, and his presence filled the silence that might have otherwise turned lonely. They had fallen into a rhythm. Shared dinners, late-night talks, and these little movie nights that made the house feel alive again. Ethan finally settled on a movie, a light-hearted romantic comedy, and set the remote aside. This one's good, he said, smiling. No sad endings this time. Clara leaned back, wrapping her blanket around her legs. We'll see about that, she murmured playfully as the movie began. The sounds of laughter and cheerful music filled the room. The warmth of the fireplace flickered nearby, and for a while, everything felt easy. But as the story unfolded, Clara's smile slowly faded. The main character on screen was a woman who had recently gone through a painful breakup and was learning to start over. Her quiet moments, her forced smiles, her hesitation to trust again, all of it felt too familiar. Clara felt her chest tighten as she realized how much she saw herself in that woman. She took a sip of cocoa and tried to shake it off, but Ethan noticed the change in her expression. You okay? He asked, his voice calm, genuine. Clara nodded quickly. Yeah, just thinking. Ethan didn't press. He turned his eyes back to the screen, but his glance lingered for a moment longer than usual. There was care in it, a kind of understanding that only comes from seeing someone's heart up close. The movie continued, but Clara wasn't really watching anymore. Her mind drifted to the life she used to have, the dinners, the conversations, the plans that never turned out the way she thought they would. Divorce hadn't just taken her husband away. It had taken away a part of how she saw herself. She was strong, yes, but sometimes strength felt lonely. Ethan laughed suddenly at a joke in the movie, and the sound pulled her back. She looked at him and couldn't help but smile. He was growing up fast, his features more defined now, his voice deeper, his words more thoughtful. Somewhere along the way, her little boy had become a man. She realized how grateful she was to have him there. He didn't fill the space his father left. No, one could, but his presence had healed parts of her that she didn't even know were wounded. The movie shifted into a tender scene. The main characters sitting side by side, talking about love and fear. Clara watched quietly, her thoughts echoing the lines from the screen. It's hard to start again when you've been broken once, the actress said softly. Clara exhaled. She's right, she whispered under her breath, not realizing Ethan heard her. What did you say? He asked. Clara blinked and smiled faintly. Nothing, just talking to myself. He nodded, but his eyes stayed on her. You don't have to pretend everything's fine all the time, you know, he said gently. Clara looked at him, surprised by the tone in his voice. There was no teasing, no distance, just quiet care. You sound like an old soul, she said softly. He smiled. Maybe I learned it from you. Something about that moment felt heavy but warm at the same time. It wasn't dramatic. No tears, no big confession. But it held a depth that made her heart stir. They turned back to the TV, yet the room felt different now. The silence between them was comfortable but full of meaning. Outside, the wind grew louder, and the house seemed to settle into its own rhythm. The light from the screen danced across their faces, one older, tired but gentle, the other young, calm, and quietly strong. When the movie reached its ending, Clara realized she hadn't followed the story at all. Her thoughts had wandered too far. She smiled faintly, whispering, "I think I missed the whole movie." Ethan chuckled. "You always do." She nudged him with her elbow. "Maybe next time I'll pick something less emotional." He grinned. "You'll still cry. It's your thing." Their laughter filled the room again, wrapping around them like the warmth of a blanket. The kind of laughter that comes not just from a joke, but from love. The kind that heals without trying. When the credits rolled, Ethan stood up to grab some water. Clara watched him for a moment. The steady way he moved, the small smile still on his lips. Something inside her softened. Life had taken a lot from her, but it had also given her moments like this. Moments that reminded her she wasn't truly alone. And somewhere deep down, she felt a small spark. Not of romance, but of hope. Maybe, just maybe, her story wasn't over yet. That night, as she turned off the lights and headed to bed, the silence in the house no longer felt heavy. It felt peaceful, alive. Something had begun to shift, quiet, invisible, but real. The next evening would bring a conversation that would change everything. But for now, it was just a quiet night, a soft smile, and the faint glow of a paused Netflix screen. The next evening came with rain. The sound of droplets tapping against the windows filled the room while the smell of fresh popcorn spread through the house. Ethan and Clara settled on the same couch again. The same Netflix menu glowing on the screen. It was supposed to be another simple movie night. But something about the air felt heavier than before. Quieter. Slower. Full of thoughts neither of them had said out loud. Ethan picked a movie without much thought. It was another romantic drama. One about people finding love after loss. Clara smiled politely when he pressed play. But her heart was far away. She tried to focus on the screen. That every scene seemed to touch something deep inside her. The loneliness of the main character. The way she forced a smile. The way she tried to convince herself that she was fine when she wasn't. Halfway through the movie, a scene came where the woman admitted, "Sometimes I feel invisible. Like the world moved on and forgot I was part of it." The line hit Clara hard. She felt her chest tighten as memories of her own life after the divorce came rushing back. The quiet dinners, the empty bed, the way she'd learned to talk less because no one was really listening. She didn't mean to speak, but the words slipped out softly. It's hard being alone after you've spent years caring for someone who isn't there anymore. Ethan reached for the remote and paused the movie. The sudden silence made Clara realize what she'd just said. She looked down, embarrassed, brushing a strand of hair from her face. Ethan's voice was calm but serious. "Mom, you don't have to hide how you feel." She blinked, unsure what to say. "I'm not hiding anything. I'm fine." He shook his head gently. "You always say that. But I see it. You put on a brave face. You keep the house running. You smile when you talk to people. But when it's quiet, you look tired. Not just from work, but from holding everything together." Clara's throat tightened. She wasn't used to her son talking to her like that. With such calm strength, almost as if he were the parent now. She tried to smile. "That's part of life, Ethan. Everyone gets lonely sometimes." He looked at her with quiet conviction. "Maybe, but not everyone deserves to stay lonely." The words hung in the air like a spark. Clara's eyes softened, but her heart began to race. She didn't know how to respond. Ethan leaned forward, elbows resting on his knees. His expression was gentle but firm, like he'd been waiting to say this for a while. "You've always taken care of everyone else," he said. "Me, Dad, your friends, your work. You never stopped. But you forgot to take care of yourself. You deserve more than quiet nights pretending you're okay. You deserve to feel alive again." Clara stared at him, completely still. His voice wasn't emotional or dramatic. It was steady, thoughtful, filled with an understanding that pierced straight through her heart. For a moment, she didn't see her little boy anymore. She saw a man, one who understood her pain, one who saw her not just as his mother, but as a person who had lived, lost, and tried to rebuild. She looked away, blinking back the tears that threatened to fall. "You're too young to understand these things," she whispered. He smiled faintly. "Maybe. But I've watched you long enough to know what love looks like. And what it looks like when someone's missing it." Those words broke through her defenses. Clara exhaled slowly, her voice trembling slightly. "It's not easy to start over, Ethan. You get used to being strong. You tell yourself it's fine, that you don't need anyone. But sometimes, when it's quiet, it's hard." Ethan reached out and placed his hand gently over hers. It was a simple gesture, but it carried warmth, comfort, and quiet reassurance. "You don't have to be strong all the time," he said. "You've done enough of that. Let life take care of you for a change." Clara looked at their hands, her heart full. She felt something shift inside her. Not just sadness, but relief. Someone had seen her, truly seen her, without her having to explain. She managed a small smile. "You talk like someone twice your age." He chuckled softly. "Guess I had to grow up faster. Watching you go through everything. It changed me too." The room fell silent again. The TV screen glowed faintly behind them, frozen on a still image of two characters holding hands, a reflection of their own quiet connection. Clara leaned back against the sofa, letting out a long breath. "You know, sometimes I forget how much you've grown." He smiled. "You shouldn't. You raised me." She looked at him with pride, mixed with something tender, something she couldn't name. In that moment, she realized how much time had passed, how much both of them had endured, and how, somehow, they had found strength in each other. The rain outside grew heavier, echoing softly against the glass. Neither of them moved to restart the movie. The story on the screen didn't matter anymore. The real story was right there, between them, in the quiet exchange of truth, in the courage it took to speak it. Clara's heart felt lighter, even if her eyes were wet. She hadn't expected such honesty, such warmth, to come from her son that night. His words didn't just comfort her. They opened something inside her that she thought had closed forever. After a while, Ethan stood up to refill their mugs. "You want more cocoa?" he asked casually, as if nothing heavy had just passed between them. She smiled softly. "Yes, please." When he walked to the kitchen, Clara looked at the pause screen again. The characters on it were frozen mid-conversation. Two people trying to figure out love, just like her and her son had done in their own way. She wiped the corner of her eye and whispered, "Maybe it's never too late to feel alive again." Outside, the rain began to ease. The house was still, peaceful, wrapped in the quiet hum of healing. Clara realized that sometimes the words that change your life don't come from strangers or love stories. They come from someone who's been beside you all along, waiting for the right moment to say them. And that night, Ethan had done exactly that. The days after that movie night felt strangely calm. Something had shifted between Clara and Ethan, not in a dramatic way, but like a quiet light had been turned on in a dark room. Their home felt warmer, their conversations softer. Clara found herself thinking about what Ethan said almost every day. His words had touched something deep inside her, something she had ignored for too long. That evening, the sky was painted in shades of orange and gold. Clara stood in the kitchen, finishing dinner, roasted chicken and vegetables, Ethan's favorite. She didn't know why she had taken extra care with it. Maybe it was because she wanted to thank him, even if she couldn't put it into words. When Ethan walked in, rain droplets still on his jacket, he smiled at the smell. "Smells amazing," he said, setting his keys down. "I thought you deserved a real meal," she replied with a playful smile. They ate together, talking about his college projects and the movie he wanted to watch next. The laughter came easily, but underneath it, both felt the unspoken memory of that night. The moment when Ethan had said things most sons never do. After dinner, they moved to the living room. The rain had started again, tapping softly on the roof. Clara wrapped herself in her blanket, and Ethan sat beside her, scrolling through Netflix. "You pick tonight," he said, handing her the remote. She laughed. "You won't like my choice." "I'll survive," he said, smiling. She chose an old movie, one she hadn't seen since before the divorce. It was about rediscovering joy, finding new beginnings. As it played, the warm light from the screen cast soft shadows on the walls. The rain outside mixed with the quiet soundtrack, creating a feeling that was peaceful and almost magical. Halfway through, Clara spoke, her voice calm but thoughtful. "You know, what you said the other night? I've been thinking about it a lot." Ethan turned to her. "What part?" "All of it," she admitted. "About taking care of myself, about not pretending I'm okay." "You were right. I've been moving through life like I'm waiting for it to end instead of living it." He didn't interrupt. He just listened, the way someone listens when they truly care. Clara looked at the screen, then back at him. "You made me realize something. I've been afraid of being happy again. Like if I let myself enjoy life, it would mean I've forgotten the past. But maybe happiness isn't about forgetting. Maybe it's about learning to live despite what's gone." Ethan smiled softly. "That's what I wanted for you, Mom. You deserve that." For a few seconds, neither spoke. The movie continued in the background, but both were lost in that quiet connection. Clara could see how much her son had grown. Not just in years, but in heart. The boy who used to run through the house asking endless questions had become the man who could read her silence. She exhaled slowly. "You've grown up so fast. Sometimes I look at you and I don't see my little boy anymore." Ethan chuckled. "Guess we both changed, huh?" Clara smiled. "Maybe for the better." He nodded. "Definitely for the better." The room fell into an easy quiet again. Outside, the rain grew heavier, and thunder rolled softly in the distance. Clara pulled her blanket tighter, and without thinking, Ethan handed her his. "Here, take this one too," he said. She accepted it with a grateful smile. "You're too kind. Someone's got to take care of you," he said lightly. Echoing his words from that earlier night. It made her heart warm. Not from sadness, but from love, deep and unconditional. For years, she had felt like the one holding everything together. But now, she felt safe enough to let go, even if just a little. As the movie neared its end, Clara's eyes grew heavy. She leaned back on the couch, resting her head lightly on Ethan's shoulder without realizing it. He didn't move or speak. He just sat still, letting her rest. The glow from the TV bathed them in soft light. A mother and son who had walked through storms and somehow found peace in each other's quiet company. When the credits rolled, Ethan noticed she had fallen asleep. Her expression was calm, almost peaceful. He smiled faintly, turned off the TV, and sat there for a while, listening to the sound of rain and her steady breathing. For the first time, he felt like everything was okay. Not perfect, not fixed, just okay. And maybe that was enough. A few minutes later, Clara stirred, opening her eyes slowly. "Did I fall asleep?" she asked grudgingly. "Yeah," Ethan said, chuckling. "You missed the ending." She stretched lightly. "You'll have to tell me what happened." He smiled. The main character finally realized she was never really alone. She just needed to look around. Clara stared at him, realizing he wasn't just talking about the movie. "You're wiser than you look," she said softly. "I get that a lot," he teased. She laughed quietly, the kind of laugh that comes from feeling seen. Then she stood up, turning off the lamp. "Good night, Ethan," she said warmly. "Good night, Mom," he replied. She paused at the hallway, glancing back at him once more. "Thank you for everything." He didn't need to ask what she meant. He just nodded. Always. As Clara walked to her room, she felt a strange calm in her chest. It wasn't joy, not exactly, it was peace. For years, she had carried the weight of heartbreak and silence, but now, she finally felt light enough to breathe again. That night, as she lay in bed listening to the rain fade into a gentle rhythm, Clara realized something simple but true. Love changes shape, but it never disappears. Sometimes it returns quietly, not through romance or passion, but through understanding, kindness, and the voice of someone who sees you clearly when the world does not. And in that realization, she smiled to herself. The next morning would be new, and for the first time in a long while, she was ready for it. The weeks that followed felt lighter, as if the air inside the house had changed. Clara noticed it first in the mornings. How she woke up without that familiar heaviness in her chest. How the sunlight through the kitchen window felt warmer than before. Ethan's words from that night had planted something inside her, something small but powerful. She started to smile more, to take small steps she'd been afraid of. She went for morning walks around the neighborhood, joined a book club at the local cafe, and even started painting again, a hobby she had left behind after her divorce. Each stroke of the brush felt like a quiet reminder that life could still be beautiful. Even after heartbreak, Ethan noticed the change. He'd come home from college and find her humming softly, the smell of fresh paint or baked bread filling the house. "You've been busy," he'd say with a grin. Clara would smile back. "I'm trying something new." They still had their movie nights, but now the laughter came easier. Their conversations grew deeper but also happier, not weighed down by sadness, but filled with curiosity and light. They talked about travel, music, books, and dreams they'd both put aside. One Saturday afternoon, while they were planting flowers in the backyard, Ethan looked at her with quiet pride. "You've changed, Mom." She paused, brushing dirt from her hands. "In a good way, I hope." "In the best way," he said sincerely. "You look lighter." She smiled. "Maybe I finally stopped fighting the past." They worked side by side, the sun warm on their backs, the garden slowly coming to life around them. The air smelled of fresh soil and new beginnings. Clara hadn't realized how much she'd needed this. Not just the garden, but the act of creating something again. As they rested on the porch steps, she looked at him and said softly, "You know, that night when we were watching Netflix, you said something that changed me." Ethan tilted his head. "What did I say?" "That I deserve to be happy," she replied. "I don't think anyone had said that to me in years. Maybe not even when I needed to hear it most." He smiled faintly. "I meant it." "I know," she said. "And I think I finally believe it." For a moment they sat in silence, just watching the wind move through the flowers they'd planted. It wasn't the silence of sadness anymore. It was peace, the kind that comes when you stop holding your breath after too long. Later that evening, they decided to have dinner outside. Clara lit small candles on the table while Ethan set down the food. The soft glow of light reflected on their faces as they ate and talked about everything and nothing, life, plans, memories. When the conversation drifted toward her marriage, Clara didn't shy away from it like she used to. "I used to think losing him meant I lost myself," she said quietly. "But maybe it just meant I had to find who I was again." Ethan nodded thoughtfully. "You're stronger than you think." She looked at him with warmth. "You helped me remember that." He laughed lightly. "Guess I'm good for something after all." Clara chuckled, but inside, her heart swelled with pride. Ethan wasn't just her son. He had become her friend, her quiet anchor. Their bond had deepened in a way that words couldn't fully capture. As the evening grew cooler, they moved inside, carrying their laughter with them. They sat once more on the couch, as they always did, wrapped in blankets, scrolling for another movie. Clara noticed the way Ethan smiled when he found one of her old favorites and added it to the list. "You remembered," she said softly. "Of course," he replied. "You always said it had the best ending." She smiled. "I like endings that make sense." He pressed play, and soon, the living room filled with familiar music. The story unfolded on the screen. Two people finding their way back to happiness after years of pain. Clara watched, but this time, she didn't see herself in the woman who was lost. She saw herself in the one who had finally begun to heal. When the credits rolled, Clara leaned her head on Ethan's shoulder, just as she had before. The gesture felt simple but full of meaning. A quiet thank you for everything he had unknowingly given her. Ethan smiled. "See? I told you happy endings exist." Clara closed her eyes, whispering, "Yes, they do." For a long time, neither moved. The room was peaceful, the light from the TV fading into the shadows. It wasn't just another night of movies. It was a moment of stillness, of understanding, of quiet love that didn't need words. Later, after Ethan went to his room, Clara stood by the window, looking out at the garden they had built together. The moonlight touched the new flowers, and she felt something she hadn't felt in years. Contentment. She thought about the path that had brought her here. The pain, the loss, the loneliness, and realized that all of it had led to this moment. Life hadn't given her back what she lost, but it had given her something else. Peace, connection, and the courage to begin again. That night, before going to bed, she paused by Ethan's door. She could hear the faint sound of his music playing. She smiled, whispering quietly, "Thank you, my boy," before walking away. In her room, she turned off the lamp, the soft darkness wrapping around her like a gentle hug. She lay down, feeling calm, her heart steady. She knew tomorrow would come with its usual worries, but she wasn't afraid of it anymore. For the first time in a long while, Clara felt alive, not because everything was perfect, but because she had learned to see beauty in imperfection. And as sleep slowly found her, she thought of that one quiet night when a simple sentence from her son had changed everything. Sometimes, the words that heal you don't come from love stories or promises. They come from someone sitting beside you on a couch, during an ordinary movie night, saying the one thing you didn't know you needed to hear. And for Clara, that had made all the difference.